The paramedic kept asking my name, but I could barely whisper it through the blood pooling in my mouth. Claire. Claire Thompson. All because I said one word. No. You know what's funny about bleeding on marble floors? The blood pools so perfectly, like some sick piece of art. And there I was, 18 years old, watching my life drain out in designer patterns while my family, my own goddamn family, stood there watching me choke on my own defiance. They taught me that love sounds like obedience. But love that costs your safety? That isn't love. That's control wrapped in Christmas morning ribbons and birthday cake frosting. When they saw the document I'd hidden, my parents went silent. Then they went pale. Because for the first time in my life, I held something they couldn't take from me. And it was killing them faster than I was bleeding out on their precious Italian marble. You want to know what I learned bleeding out in that ambulance? They taught me that love sounds like obedience. But love that costs your safety isn't love, it's control. And I'd been controlled so long, I'd forgotten what my own voice sounded like when it wasn't saying, "Yes, sir," and "Of course," and "Whatever you need." Silence isn't loyalty, silence is survival, and I was done just surviving. The siren wailed above me, but for the first time in 18 years, it wasn't drowning out my voice, it was amplifying it, because I was finally making noise, finally screaming back at a world that had taught me to whisper. Picture this: a house that could grace magazine covers, Georgian colonial with ivy climbing the brick walls just so, manicured lawn that the neighbors whispered about with envy, kitchen with granite countertops that reflected nothing but lies, my mother's charity luncheons where she'd smile and talk about family values while I served cucumber sandwiches with the crusts cut off, invisible as the help. The neighbors saw smiles. I saw survival. They saw the perfect family Christmas card photo. I saw the 37 takes it required, the bruises on my arms from my father's grip when I wouldn't smile wide enough, the way my mother's eyes would go cold and dead when the camera wasn't rolling. They saw success. I saw a prison with a mortgage and a 3-car garage. Every morning, I'd wake up in that house and feel like I was suffocating on privilege. You know that feeling when you're drowning, but everyone keeps telling you how lucky you are to be in such beautiful water? That was my childhood. Drowning in Egyptian cotton sheets and organic breakfast parfait. Gasping for air in rooms that cost more than most people's homes. The Thompsons. God, how they loved that name. Like it meant something. Like it carried weight in this world, beyond the weight it carried on my chest every single day. Mrs. Patterson from next door would coo over our family like we were some kind of domestic perfection exhibit. "Oh, how lucky you are, Claire. Such a beautiful home. Such successful parents." And I'd smile and nod because that's what good daughters do. They don't tell Mrs. Patterson that beautiful homes can be beautiful cages, and successful parents can be successful jailers. The house had 7 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms, but somehow there was never room for me to breathe. Every corner was staged, every surface was curated, every moment was performed. We didn't live in that house, we were exhibited in it. Like mannequins in a window display, frozen in poses that hurt our necks but looked perfect from the street. Sunday mornings were the worst. Church clothes and church faces and church voices that never raised above a respectful whisper. My mother would glide through those halls in her Chanel suits, air-kissing other wives whose children were also slowly suffocating on expectation. My father would shake hands with men who measured success in square footage and stock portfolios, never in the happiness of the children who lived in those sprawling houses. And me? I was the accessory. The well-behaved daughter who knew when to speak and when to disappear. I was furniture with a pulse, decoration with a diploma, proof of their parenting skills without any consideration for what kind of person was actually being raised. Being the reliable one means no one checks if you're breaking. They just keep piling on more weight because you haven't collapsed yet. I was 7 when I learned that my achievements were invisible unless they reflected well on my brother. Ethan could shit in a paper bag and they'd call it modern art. I could cure cancer and they'd ask why I didn't do it faster. Science fair? I built Ethan's volcano while he played Xbox. He got the ribbon. I got to clean up the mess. Honor roll? That's nice, Claire, but did you see Ethan scored the winning goal? Piano recital where I played Chopin's Nocturne without a single mistake? They were too busy on their phones to notice, but they sure noticed when Ethan farted during the quiet part and disrupted the whole performance. Somehow, that became a funny family story. My music became background noise. I remember being 12 and staying up until 3 in the morning helping Ethan with his history project because he'd rather spend his time vaping behind the school with his idiot friends. I researched. I wrote. I formatted. I even drove to Staples at midnight to print it on the good paper because Ethan had forgotten until the last minute. He got an A+. The teacher praised his exceptional research skills and mature analysis. Meanwhile, my own project, a detailed examination of women's roles in the Revolutionary War that I'd been working on for weeks, got a B+ because I'd focused too narrowly on an unimportant demographic. Apparently, half the population wasn't worth studying, but Ethan's success was family success. My success was just Claire being Claire expected, unremarkable, baseline, like breathing. You don't celebrate someone for breathing correctly, you only notice when they stop. I became the family ghost, present but unseen, contributing but uncredited, necessary but unacknowledged. I was the one who remembered birthdays and made reservations and picked up dry cleaning and bought graduation gifts for cousins whose names my parents couldn't quite recall. I was the family's memory, their organizational system, their emotional labor department rolled into one invisible teenager. Christmas mornings were particularly brutal. Ethan would tear through presents like a hurricane of entitlement. New MacBook, designer sneakers, concert tickets, gaming chair, noise-canceling headphones. The pile of boxes around him looked like a Best Buy had exploded. And me? I got practical gifts, a planner, new school supplies, a sensible winter coat. Things that helped me help everyone else more efficiently. Claire's so low maintenance, my mother would chirp to relatives. She never asks for anything. I never asked because I learned early that asking led to disappointment, and disappointment led to the lecture about gratitude and how fortunate I was, and how selfish it was to want more when I already had so much. It was easier to want nothing than to want something, and be reminded that my wants didn't matter. The worst part wasn't the inequality, it was the gaslighting. When I finally worked up the courage at 15 to point out that Ethan had gotten a car for his 16th birthday while I got a bus pass, my father looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Ethan needs a car for football practice and his job, he said with that patronizing tone he usually reserved for telemarketers. You don't play sports, and you don't have a job. What would you do with a car? What would I do with a car? Maybe I'd drive to the library without having to coordinate with everyone else's schedules. Maybe I'd go to coffee shops and bookstores and places where I could exist without being someone's helper or someone's shadow. Maybe I'd just drive with the windows down and music up and remember what it felt like to go somewhere because I wanted to, not because someone else needed me to. But I didn't say any of that. I said, "You're right, Dad. I'm sorry." Because good daughters don't argue. Good daughters don't point out hypocrisy. Good daughters apologize for wanting basic equality in their own families. The invisible child doctrine was simple. Be helpful, be quiet, be grateful, and for God's sake, don't be a burden, don't have needs, don't have opinions, don't have problems that can't be solved with a lecture about perspective and privilege. I learned to cry silently so I wouldn't disturb anyone. I learned to celebrate my achievements privately so I wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable with my joy. I learned to solve my own problems so I wouldn't be accused of creating drama. I learned to be so perfectly self-sufficient that I became perfectly invisible. And the most fucked up part? I thought this was normal. I thought every family had a designated invisible child, whose job was to make everyone else's life easier. I thought love came with conditions, and praise came with caveats, and worth was something you earned daily through service and silence. I thought I was the problem. I thought I wasn't trying hard enough, wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy enough of the attention that Ethan got just for existing with a Y chromosome and a charming smile. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. But I was about to become very, very right about one thing. My grandfather had seen me when no one else would. One day, an envelope arrived addressed only to me. Not the Thompson family, not Mr. and Mrs. Thompson and children. Just Claire Thompson in handwriting I recognized from birthday cards that always came with $20 bills and notes that said, "For something special, just for you." Grandpa Richard, my father's father, who died when I was 16, who used to wink at me during family dinners when my parents would interrupt me mid-sentence to listen to whatever Ethan was saying, who used to ask me about my books and my music and my thoughts like they mattered, who used to slip me extra money and say, "Don't tell your parents. This is for Claire things, not family things." I thought the card was late condolences from someone who didn't know he'd died. But when I opened it, my hand started shaking so hard I could barely read the letter inside. "My dear Claire," it began, and already I was crying because no one in my family had called me dear anything in years. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably 18 or close to it. I'm writing this on your 15th birthday, watching you serve cake to everyone else, and never getting a piece yourself, watching you smile while your parents plan Ethan's future and forget you have one too. I've been watching, Claire. I've been seeing, and I've been planning. Your parents think love is possession. They think children are investments that should pay dividends in reflected glory and social status. They think your worth is measured by how well you serve their image of a perfect family. They're wrong. By the time you read this, you'll have access to a trust fund I set up in your name. It's enough for college, enough for a place of your own, enough for choices. Your parents don't know about it because I knew they'd find a way to make it about them, to control it, to use it as leverage to keep you small and grateful and trapped. The account information is in the safety deposit box at First National. The key is taped under the drawer of the music box I gave you for your 13th birthday. Your name is the only one on the account. Your signature is the only one that matters. I see you, Claire. I see your kindness and your strength and your intelligence. I see how you've learned to make yourself small so others can feel big. I see how you've been taught that love requires self-erasure. It doesn't. You are not a supporting character in someone else's story. You are not a footnote in the Thompson family legacy. You are not a resource to be used up in service of other people's dreams. You are my granddaughter, and you are worthy of love that doesn't cost you your voice. You are worthy of a life that belongs to you. Use this money wisely. Use it bravely. Use it to build something that makes you proud. All my love, Grandpa Richard. P.S. Your parents will try to convince you that you owe them this money, that it belongs to the family, that keeping it for yourself is selfish. Remember, people who demand your silence about your own abuse are not people who have your best interests at heart. I read that letter 17 times sitting on my bedroom floor, memorizing every word like it was a sacred text. And maybe it was. Maybe it was the first time anyone had ever written down that I mattered, that I was seen, that I deserved better than what I was getting. But even as relief flooded through me, relief so intense it felt like drowning in reverse fear crept in around the edges. Because I knew my family. I knew what they were capable of when they felt threatened. And a trust fund with my name on it? That was a threat to everything they'd built their identities around. What happens when they find out? I didn't know yet. But I was about to learn that some families will destroy their children before they'll let them escape. The next 3 months were a careful dance of deception and preparation. I couldn't just disappear. They'd find me, drag me back, convince me I was crazy or ungrateful or both. I needed proof of what I'd always known but never been able to articulate, that this family was toxic, that their love was conditional, that their treatment of me was wrong. So I started documenting everything. I recorded conversations where my mother would spend 20 minutes planning Ethan's graduation party and 30 seconds asking about my day. I saved text messages where my father would ask me to pick up Ethan's dry cleaning, but couldn't remember when my AP exams were. I photographed the difference between Ethan's bedroom flat-screen TV, gaming setup, mini fridge, and mine, which looked like a nun's cell with a desk. If you've ever had to plan your escape from people who call it love, you'll understand this part. You understand the way you start to see everything with new eyes. The way every interaction becomes evidence of what you always knew but couldn't prove. You understand the way you have to become a detective in your own life, gathering proof that your reality is real. I made copies of everything and stored them in 3 different places: the cloud, a safety deposit box, and with my best friend Sarah, who was the only person I trusted with the truth. Sarah, who'd been watching this slow-motion emotional abuse for years and didn't know how to help because I'd always insisted everything was fine. "Your family is fucked up," she told me one afternoon as we sat in her car after school. Like, seriously fucked up. You know that, right? I did know it, finally. But knowing it and being able to do something about it were different things entirely. The bank visits were the hardest part. I had to be so careful, so strategic. I'd tell my parents I was going to study groups, or volunteer shifts, or shopping trips with Sarah. I'd park 3 blocks away and walk to the bank like I was committing a federal crime instead of accessing my own inheritance. The first time I walked into First National and asked to speak to someone about a trust fund, I was sure they'd laugh at me. I was sure it was all a mistake, that Grandpa Richard's letter was just the wishful thinking of a sick old man who'd forgotten how money worked. But when I handed over the account number from his letter, the bank officer's eyebrows shot up toward her hairline. "Miss Thompson," she said, looking at her computer screen, and then back at me like I'd grown wings. "I've been waiting for you to come in. Your grandfather set this up with very specific instructions. Would you like to speak privately?" The number on that screen, I still get dizzy thinking about it. It wasn't just college money. It wasn't just escape money. It was freedom money. It was choices money. It was fuck you money disguised as a trust fund. But the best part wasn't the amount. The best part was the restriction. Funds may only be accessed by Claire Thompson. No co-signers. No exceptions. No family consultation required. Grandpa Richard had known exactly what kind of people he was protecting me from. The lawyer part was crucial. I used some of the trust money to hire an attorney who specialized in family financial disputes. Not because I wanted to sue anyone, but because I knew my parents would fight dirty once they found out, and I needed someone who could fight back. "Your grandfather was very thorough," the lawyer told me during our first meeting. "This trust is ironclad, but I have to warn you, when families lose access to money they thought belonged to them, they can become unpredictable. What a polite word for what was coming. But I was 18 years old, and I had money, and I had proof of years of emotional neglect and favoritism. I had documentation of every time they'd made me feel small, every time they'd prioritized Ethan's wants over my needs, every time they'd treated me like hired help instead of their daughter. I was ready for war. I just didn't know they were too. The birthday party was supposed to be Ethan's moment of triumph. 18 years old, full scholarship to state, captain of the lacrosse team, early admission to business school. The golden boy getting his golden moment in our golden house with all the golden people who mattered in our golden social circle. My parents had been planning this party for months. Catered dinner, open bar, live music, professional photographer, the works. Because Ethan's 18th birthday wasn't just a celebration, it was a social media event, a networking opportunity, a chance for my parents to show off their perfect son and their perfect parenting and their perfect family. And I was supposed to be part of that perfect picture. The dutiful sister who smiled and served and stayed in the background where good daughters belonged. But I had different plans. The gift box sat on my dresser for 3 days before the party, wrapped in silver paper with a white bow. It looked innocent enough, just the right size for jewelry or a watch or some other expensive trinket that rich kids give each other. But inside was something my family had never seen before. Proof that their control over me was an illusion. Inside that box was the trust fund documentation. Every page that proved Grandpa Richard had seen through their bullshit and loved me enough to give me choices. Every page that proved I wasn't dependent on their approval or their money or their version of love anymore. Inside that box was my freedom, wrapped up like a present I was giving to myself. The party was everything my parents had planned for. Designer dresses and champagne toasts and networking conversations disguised as friendly catching up. I moved through it like a ghost, serving drinks and clearing plates and smiling when spoken to, playing my role one last time. But underneath my perfect daughter costume, I was vibrating with anticipation, because I knew something none of them knew. This was their last performance. After tonight, the show would be over. My father made a toast in the middle of dinner, raising his glass toward Ethan like he was presenting him to the gods themselves. "To my son," he began, and the room went quiet with that reverential hush that money and status demand. 18 years ago, we welcomed this remarkable young man into our family, and every day since has been a testament to what's possible when you combine talent with hard work and strong family values. I felt my stomach turn as he continued, painting this picture of unconditional support and endless encouragement that bore no resemblance to the reality I'd lived. He talked about being proud, about being blessed, about the importance of family unity and shared success. "Ethan has shown us what it means to pursue excellence without compromise," he said, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Ethan, who'd never done his own homework, who'd never faced a consequence, who'd never been told no in his entire life, was apparently the poster child for hard work. "To family unity," my father finished, raising his glass higher. "To family unity," the room echoed back, because that's what you do at parties like this. You echo the host's values, you validate his perspective, you participate in the mythology he's selling. But I didn't drink. I couldn't, because I knew what family unity meant in this house, and I was about to blow it apart. The gift opening ceremony came after dinner, because of course it did. Ethan held court in the living room while guests gathered around to watch him unwrap his bounty. Designer clothes and expensive electronics and gift cards and more shit he didn't need but would graciously accept anyway because that's what golden boys do. I waited until near the end, when most of the big gifts had been opened and the energy was starting to flag. Then I stepped forward with my silver box and my silver smile and my silver tongue ready to cut through 18 years of lies. "This one's from me," I said, handing him the box. He grinned at me with that same patronizing smile he'd been giving me since we were kids. "Let's see what the little sister got me." The little sister, even now, even in front of all these people, he couldn't just use my name. He tore off the wrapping paper with the same careless enthusiasm he brought to everything in his life, the assumption that whatever was inside belonged to him simply because he wanted it. And when he opened the box and saw the bank statements and legal documents, his smile faltered. "What is this?" he asked, squinting at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. "Read it," I said, loud enough for the room to hear. "Read it out loud." And the stupid bastard actually did it. He started reading my grandfather's letter and the trust fund documents out loud to a room full of my parents' friends and colleagues and social climbing acquaintances. He read about emotional neglect and family favoritism and money that was mine, not ours, not the family's, but mine. The room went silent except for Ethan's voice getting smaller and more confused as he read. I watched my parents' faces go through a series of emotions: confusion, understanding, disbelief, and finally, rage. Pure, incandescent rage. "There is no car," I said when he finished reading, my voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "There is no car because you don't deserve a car. You don't deserve anything you've gotten, and you sure as hell don't deserve anything that was meant for me." That's when my brother lunged. I'd expected anger. I'd expected shouting. I'd even expected tears and manipulation and guilt trips about family loyalty. But I hadn't expected Ethan to launch himself across the room like a linebacker going for a tackle. He hit me hard enough to knock me off my feet, hard enough to send me stumbling backward into the coffee table, hard enough to split my lip against the edge of my mother's precious crystal bowl. And as I fell, as the pain exploded across my face and blood filled my mouth, I heard my father's voice cutting through the chaos. "You ungrateful little bitch. The slap came before I could get back to my feet. My father's hand across my face so hard my ears rang, so hard I saw stars, so hard I knew I'd have a handprint bruise for weeks. And as I lay there on the floor, tasting my own blood and feeling the marble cold against my cheek, I looked up and saw Ethan's face. He was smiling, that beautiful, charming golden boy smile that had gotten him everything he'd ever wanted. He was smiling down at me like my pain was the best gift he'd gotten all night. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the sound of someone dialing 911 and my mother's voice saying, "There's been an accident. Like I'd tripped, like I'd fallen, like my own family hadn't just beaten me unconscious for the crime of refusing to disappear quietly, even bleeding out on their marble floor. I was still just an inconvenience they needed to clean up." I woke up in the ambulance with a paramedic asking my name and blood in my mouth, and the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Sirens. Loud, urgent, impossible to ignore. Sirens announcing to the world that something was wrong, that someone was hurt, that help was coming. For the first time in my life, someone was making noise about my pain. The ER was all bright lights and concerned voices and people who touched me gently, who asked permission before they did anything, who apologized when they hurt me even accidentally. It was like landing on an alien planet where my comfort actually mattered. "You're safe now," the nurse kept saying as she cleaned my wounds and documented my injuries. "You're safe." Safe. I'd forgotten what that word meant. I'd forgotten it was possible to exist in a space where people cared about your well-being without expecting anything in return, where help was given freely instead of held over your head as leverage. The attorney arrived while I was still in the hospital. My attorney, who I'd hired with my money to protect my interests. Not the family lawyer, not someone my parents had chosen, but someone who worked for me and me alone. "The trust fund is secure," she told me, pulling a chair up to my hospital bed. "Your grandfather's instructions were very specific, and what happened tonight doesn't change your legal rights. If anything, it strengthens your position." She was right, because while my family had been busy beating me up for defying them, they'd done it in front of 30 witnesses with phones and social media accounts. The golden family image was about to become a viral nightmare, and there wasn't enough money in the world to clean up that kind of mess. "I want to press charges," I told her. "Against all of them? Against all of them." For the first time in my life, safety didn't mean silence. It meant consequences. It meant justice. It meant using my voice at full volume instead of whispering apologies for existing. The reckoning came swift and brutal, the way it always does when perfect facades crumble in public. The video leaked within hours. Someone at the party had filmed Ethan reading the trust fund documents, had captured my defiance and his attack and my father's slap. 18 seconds of footage that destroyed 18 years of carefully constructed reputation. My parents tried damage control at first. They hired a PR firm and a crisis management team and a lawyer who specialized in making embarrassing family situations disappear. They released a statement about family disagreements and private matters and seeking professional help. But you can't spin away assault caught on camera. You can't PR your way out of child abuse when the child is 18 and has her own money and her own lawyer and her own voice. The charges stuck. Assault and battery for my father, contributing to assault for my mother, who'd stood there and watched. And for Ethan? Well, his full scholarship disappeared faster than his charming smile when the university saw the video of their star athlete attacking a girl. My mother's charity board positions evaporated overnight. Her social circle, built on careful cultivation of the right connections with the right families, turned their backs with the speed that only true social climbers can manage. Suddenly, no one could remember being close friends with the Thompsons. Suddenly, everyone had always known there was something off about that family. The house, that perfect, magazine-worthy Georgian colonial monument to their success, went on the market within a month. Turns out, when your son loses his scholarship and faces criminal charges, when your charity work dries up, When your professional reputation is destroyed by viral videos of you abusing your daughter, maintaining a 7-bedroom showpiece becomes impossible. They called it karma. I called it math. Subtract me from their equation. My labor, my silence, my complicity in their perfect family lie, and everything else collapsed. I wasn't just the invisible child. I was the foundation they'd built their whole identity on. And when I walked away, their house of cards came tumbling down. The most beautiful part was watching Ethan try to explain himself to college admissions committees and scholarship boards and internship coordinators. Try explaining why you assaulted your sister over a trust fund when you're supposed to be the character and leadership example they want, representing their institution. But it was supposed to be family money, he kept saying in interviews, in depositions, in the court proceedings that followed. Like his entitlement was a valid legal defense. Like wanting something badly enough made it yours. That phrase became a meme. But it was supposed to be family money. Started showing up on social media every time someone got caught being outrageously entitled. My brother became the poster child for privileged kids who couldn't handle hearing no. I'd like to say I felt sorry for them. I'd like to say I took no pleasure in watching their perfect life implode. But I'd be lying. Every news article about my father's resignation from his board positions, every social media post mocking my brother's victim statement, every photo of the for sale sign on their house felt like justice finally catching up. They'd stolen 18 years of my life, 18 years of my voice, 18 years of my worth. Watching them lose 18 months of their reputation felt like the most generous exchange rate I could have asked for. Recovery isn't what you see in movies. It's not a montage of therapy sessions with uplifting music and breakthrough moments that happen on schedule. It's ugly and slow and nonlinear. And there are days when you miss the familiar pain because at least it was predictable. But it's also the first apartment with your name on the lease, where you can paint the walls any color you want and eat cereal for dinner and play music at 2 a.m. because there's no one to disturb. It's therapy sessions where someone listens to your story and doesn't immediately ask what you did to contribute to the problem. It's friendships with people who like you for who you are instead of what you can do for them. It's mornings when you wake up and remember that you're free. My apartment was nothing like the house I grew up in. Small, with thin walls, and neighbors who played their music too loud and a heating system that made weird noises all winter. But it was mine. Every cracked tile and leaky faucet and squeaky floorboard belonged to me in a way that marble countertops and crystal chandeliers never had. I hung my diploma on the wall. My diploma, earned with my grades, representing my hard work, and for the first time, I felt proud of an achievement that no one could take credit for except me. The volunteering started almost by accident. I'd been going to therapy for months, working through 18 years of emotional abuse and family trauma, when my therapist suggested finding ways to help other people in similar situations. Sometimes, she said, helping others heal can help us heal too. So I started volunteering at a crisis center for teenagers in abusive family situations. And you know what I learned? My story wasn't unique. My experience wasn't rare. There were dozens of us kids who'd been raised to believe their worth was conditional, who'd been taught that love required self-erasure, who'd been trained to accept crumbs and call them feasts. But there were also success stories. Kids who'd escaped, who'd built new lives, who'd learned to use their voices. Kids who'd discovered that families are supposed to lift you up, not tear you down. Kids who'd found chosen families that treated them with the respect and love they'd never received at home. I became one of those success stories, not because my life became perfect, but because it became mine. The key to my apartment replaced the BMW key I'd never received, but it unlocked something so much more valuable than any car could have provided. It unlocked the possibility of a life lived on my own terms, at my own pace, for my own reasons. Freedom isn't fireworks. It's quiet mornings when you can drink your coffee without walking on eggshells. It's the luxury of having problems that belong to you instead of problems that belong to everyone else. It's the radical act of taking up space in your own life. A year after the trial, after the sentencing, after the last of the appeals were exhausted, I drove past my childhood neighborhood one last time. Not because I missed it, but because I wanted to see how the story ended. The house still stood, of course. Houses don't disappear just because the people who lived in them turned out to be monsters. But the for sale sign was still planted in the front yard, weathered now from months of exposure. The lawn wasn't quite as perfect as it used to be. The ivy looked a little overgrown. The windows looked dark and empty. It looked like what it had always been. A beautiful shell, with nothing real inside. I sat in my car, bought with my money, registered in my name, and felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, no nostalgia for a childhood that had been performance art instead of love. Just nothing. The house was just a building now, stripped of the power it had held over me for so long. I didn't leave a family when I walked away from the Thompsons. I left captivity. I left a system designed to keep me small and grateful and silent. I left people who called control, love, and called abuse, discipline, and called my pain dramatic overreaction. Real families don't beat you unconscious for accessing your own inheritance. Real families don't treat one child like a golden god and another like hired help. Real families don't require you to disappear in order for them to shine. Real families celebrate your voice instead of demanding your silence. The chosen family I built, my therapist, my attorney, my volunteer coordinator, my neighbors who check on me, my friends who see me, they taught me what love actually looks like. It looks like boundaries respected and voices heard, and worth that doesn't have to be earned daily through service and silence. It looks like people who are happy for your success instead of threatened by it. It looks like conflicts resolved through conversation instead of violence. It looks like apologies that don't come with conditions and support that doesn't come with strings attached. It looks like freedom that sounds like my own voice saying my own name without apology. Freedom isn't fireworks. It's quiet mornings and your own name on the lease and the revolutionary act of taking up space in your own life. It's the slow, daily practice of unlearning the lies that told you that you didn't matter, that your voice was too loud, that your needs were too much. It's the gradual understanding that the people who demanded your silence about your own abuse were never people who had your best interests at heart. It's the courage to tell your story especially when it makes other people uncomfortable. Because comfort built on someone else's pain isn't comfort worth preserving. I am free, I am home, and I am loud. And if you've ever been the invisible child in your family, if you've ever been told that your voice doesn't matter, if you've ever been taught that love requires you to disappear, I want you to know, you matter. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And you don't have to stay invisible forever.